Yes, sir. What's going on? Back at you guys early this morning, man, with some old content. We're gonna let YouTube send out my notifications and we're gonna get this show started. Excuse me. Early in the morning, we're gonna get it started, man. What's good? Shout out to everybody out there. This ain't no clickbait right here. We're talking about something that's very important. It's very important, man. So we're gonna have a conversation. And yes, man, you got to tell the truth if you want to get to the bottom of a problem. If you want to get to the bottom of it, if you want to fix it, you got to be honest about what's really going on. Now, people say a lot of things to me like, "Hey, why do you talk about this? Are you instigating?" Um, there's several channels on YouTube that talks about gangbanging, right, all day. What hood did this to what hood, and it's a whole lot of that. See, the thing is, a lot of people are scared to have this conversation, so they sweep it underneath the rug as if these problems don't exist. And it's a lot of people from our community, the black community, who tend to ignore these issues. But at the same time, you got a few black people who are speaking out about these things, and I think you guys already know who they are. And shout out to them for shedding light on what's really going on. But we're going to speak up. We're talking about foundational Black Americans and Mexicans and Latinos in Los Angeles. How about it? Um, it's a sensitive topic. This is why a lot of people just stay away from it. But you can never get to the root of the problem if you're not honest about what's really going on. I appreciate everybody for tapping in. Yes, I do. Make sure that you guys support the show, and it is what it is. Now, street TV, Alex Alonso has done a great job over maybe like the past 20 years documenting Los Angeles gang history. I think he's done a better job than anybody else in the city. And salute to Alex Alonso for the great work that he's done. You know, I remember when Alex Alonso, this had to be back in 2000 and was it 2004, 2003 or 2004, man. Alex Alonso interviewed the homie Bloodhound, right? And I think it was the For Him magazine. They used some of this stuff for the For Him magazine. Bloodhound had that gray lowrider. It was a Cadillac. It was on switches. It was on some D's. Pretty cool thing. But I remember Alex Alonso coming to the neighborhood with his cameras to document some stuff to film, and it was kind of like I said, this was the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, maybe even 2005, somewhere around that time. So he's a Los Angeles historian for sure. The man has a lot of knowledge pertaining to street culture, gang history, and all of that, man. So salute to Alex. Man, Grand Rising. Grand Rising. It is what it is. 6:50 a.m. West Coast Pacific time. We on the grind early this morning. Now, Alex had a conversation with Sonny and American Cholo. And I want to use some of these clips in its fair use. I'm not going to just play the whole video. I'm going to add commentary, stop and play, because, you get copyright issues when you just let a video play without adding commentary. Because, I had a few people ask me, well, why do you keep talking over the video? I have to, because if I don't speak over the video, then you're going to have copyright issues, right? So when I say fair use, you got to understand what fair use actually means. Can't just upload somebody's content and just let it play. You got to stop it, add commentary to avoid these copyright situations. You know how they play. You know how they get down on YouTube. Some of you do, but then a lot of you don't. Hit the like button, man, and tap on in with us this morning for the early morning conversation. Let's see if they're going to be honest about these situations. Now, let me say this. I got to be honest with the blacks. I got to be honest with the Latinos. I got to be honest with the viewers and listeners. Got to be honest with y'all. So, you all know that nobody governs black gangs, right? Nobody governs black gangs. Nobody dictates to them. So they're free to pretty much do whatever they want to do. Black gangs govern themselves. Now, when it comes to Mexican gangs, they have to follow a protocol, a structure. They have to take orders from, a prison gang. And it is what it is. That's their politics, right? But when they say blacks, no structure, no this, no. What they're really saying is blacks don't have dictators. Now, there's pros and cons with that. Sometimes when you got people, but you got to think, when you got a prison gang dictating to you, you're giving these people a whole lot of power. A lot of guys who really don't deserve power, you're giving them a whole lot of power. And these are guys who operate behind the walls. They got some soldiers on the streets, but why give a prison gang that much power over a street gang? It makes no sense. So when you think about racism and ethnic cleansing, blacks were never told to cleanse their community of Mexicans. Oh, we need to just, run Mexicans out of our community. Nobody ever gave blacks the orders to do that. That's never happened. Now, on the Mexican side, in the early 90s, they had meetings all over Mexicans had meetings all over Southern California where some of the big dogs in prison would organize the Mexican street gangs, and they started to tell them, you guys need to cleanse your communities of blacks. So this is when you started to hear about a lot of racially motivated attacks. A lot of that stuff began like in the early 90s. And their OG homies in prison, they sent the word to Mexican barrios to say, telling them to rid their communities of blacks. This is why in the earlier 2000s, like maybe the 2010s, where you seen the firebombing that took place in the Ramona Garden housing projects in East Los Angeles. That's a prime example of what I'm talking about. Just black civilians living in a particular area. No gang banging and nothing like that. And Mexicans, the Mexican gang didn't want them living in their community. They didn't want them living there. So they sent a cold message to blacks in their community. And how did they send that message? They firebombed the apartment of black civilians just for living in their community. And who gave them the instructions to do that? I think I just broke that down. The big dogs in prison told them to rid their communities of black people. So the reality of it is this: racism starts with the Mexicans, the Latinos. Like, think about it. Like when I do these videos about anti-black racism in Mexico, anti-black racism in all across Latin America, it's a part of their culture. Now, a lot of these people are in denial. They'll say, no, no, it's not true. But when you study Latin American culture, the history of Latin America, you're gonna find a lot of anti-black racism within that particular culture, within these Latino American cultures, not just Mexicans. So now when you think about black people, you know what I mean? Most black people outside of California never really experienced Mexicans like that. Well, Texas may be the other exception. Arizona, not really a big black population there. You got blacks there, but nobody thinks about Arizona like that for real. But when you think about places where black people live, places where black people are populated, nobody outside of black people outside of California and Texas never really dealt with Mexicans. So they were never taught hatred towards Mexicans because outside of California and Texas, most blacks across the country never lived around Mexicans. So that was never taught to us. Our parents never taught us to hate Mexican people. You know, most of our parents never even taught us to hate white people. But when you think about the history of this country, you can't help but to understand the history and what took place here when it comes to the things that whites have done to blacks throughout the history of this country. So you're gonna understand that. Stay divided, man. It's already divided. I can't divide something that's already divided, right? I'm just living a reality that most people refuse to talk about. I just gave you an example how East LA firebombed black people apartments just for living over there. The Avenues gang in Northeast LA, they was attacking black people just for living over there. Now, you might say, well, Mexicans get robbed in black neighborhoods, but that don't have nothing to do with race. Any and everybody can get it in the black community. Blacks were never told specifically to attack Mexicans or to cleanse their community of Mexicans. Um, the OG shot callers in prison gave orders to Mexicans in many neighborhoods across Southern Cali to attack random blacks to rid their communities of these black people. You know, our big homies never gave us no instructions to rid our communities of Mexicans. But let me tell you like this: if you go back to the '80s, even in the early '90s, there was Mexicans starting barrios in black neighborhoods. And if black people were really racist towards Mexicans, they could have crushed them the moment they tried to set up shop in their communities. But blacks really never paid them attention like that. There was a few Mexican families that stayed on the block. And for the most part, they were cool people. We spoke to them, we waved, it was all good. But once Mexicans started to get numbers and they started creating barrios in black neighborhoods, that's when a lot of problems started to rise up. You started to witness a lot of issues between black and browns that you never seen before, going back to like the 70s and the 80s. You just never seen these things in Los Angeles. Now, once the early 90s hit, that's when you began to see a lot of essays with this hatred towards black folks. You know, it became it was no longer hidden, it was right in your face. I'm pretty sure they always felt that way, but once they got enough numbers in the 90s, when they started to overpopulate Los Angeles, that's when Mexicans in many neighborhoods across Southern Cali began to show you their true feelings towards black people. And I'm just being honest with you, homie. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not making anything up. You can do your fact check. You can study everything that I'm saying. I'm giving you the irrefutable facts. Let's get into this clip.
Where you don't anything could ever occur on a positive level in terms of bridging the gap and making the relationship between these two sides, strong.
I I would actually have to agree with him. I don't like anything that man says. I will be completely honest with you. He's got people thinking that they're indigenous, and
He's talking about FBA right now. He's talking. See, Alex Alonso just asked him a question about Tyreek Nasheed. He don't know what indigenous is, for one. What Sonny don't realize is there's many indigenous tribes of the Americas, right? Sonny wants you to believe that it was just one particular group who's indigenous. When I broke it down yesterday on how um, the Asians came to the Americas, right? And how they came to the Americas and how that thing took place. But that's a whole nother conversation. Sonny's not educated. His knowledge of history comes from Spanish conquistadors and Europeans, right? This is why you never hear Mexicans talk about the second president of Mexico, Vincent Guerrero. You never hear them talk about Gaspar Yanga. They try their best to erase black history in Mexico, which is why Mexico barely added black people to the census in 2019. Come on. If you barely add a population to the census in 2019 and they've been there for centuries, that tells you everything you need. That tells you everything you need to know about their hatred towards black people. Mexico made black people. Let me say this again, rephrase that. Mexico made their black population invisible. And not just Mexico, you can witness this all over Latin America. They have made their black populations invisible. Most people never even heard of them. So it's deeper than street gangs. When you study the history of when you study Mexico's history and the history of Latin America, you're going to find a lot of anti-blackness, a lot of anti-black racism. And unfortunately, when they come to America, they bring a lot of those same. They bring a lot of those. They bring the same feelings with them. They bring the same anti-black mindset, which is why you even heard George Lopez say, the comedian, "Don't ever bring no black home. That's the worst thing for a Mexican family to see is for their daughter to bring a black man home." Lefty Gunplay said it. If my daughter brought home a black man, I'd be like, "What the hell? What? What the hell? What the?" Because it's frowned upon in Mexican Latino culture for a Mexican woman to bring a black man home, but it goes back to the anti-blackness that's embedded in their culture. Let's move on. Let's continue.
Let me read part of what history is uh, about how the blacks came into the Indian fold. And he pretty much dismissing all the other facts that's happened. So a lot of it is, I think he does it on purpose. But at the same time, I do have to agree with him. I don't see anything changing in California anytime soon because it's all gang violence. So we got to cut this loose. And that's why I say I got on a channel because I wanted to be truthful. Because if we're truthful, then we can get to the problem. And if we're not being truthful and we keep pushing all these stupid narratives and this and that, it's never going to get fixed.
Well, uh, I think homeboy
Well,
Tariq said,
you really can't fix things, man. That's been a part of Mexican culture for centuries, so you're not gonna fix it. And to make things worse, Mexican gang members are the foot soldiers of the Mexican mafia. So if the Mexican mafia has anti-black policies and they're dictating to Mexican Southsiders who are on the streets, then that'll never get fixed because you think about the anti-black racism that's already in their culture. You think about the MA giving orders to Mexican gang members, which we all know they have anti-black policies and anti-black politics. So with that being the case, things will never get fixed. Black people are better off unifying with each other and fixing our own problems. Now if you can squash some gang beeps to save lives, I'm all for that. Squash it. But what I'm saying is getting together, getting along collectively, that's not really gonna happen. You might have it in certain pockets in the city, but collectively, absolutely not. Black people, listen, we don't have no friends. What we have is a lot of people who want to steal culture from us, music, civil rights, the 14th Amendment. They benefit from our struggles, but we don't benefit from anything. I can't, and listen, I'm saying this to be real. I can't sugarcoat it. You can't name one struggle that Latinos fought for that black people benefit from. We don't benefit from nothing they fought for. We don't benefit from none of their policies. If you really look deep into the 14th Amendment, you will see that it was for the slaves, the people who built the country. Immigrants were able to piggyback off of the 14th Amendment. See, blacks didn't come over here illegally, then started to demand birthright citizenship. You know, Latinos, on the other hand, they crossed the border illegally and a lot of their children became citizens just because their parents had them in this country. See, that was a loophole that they used in the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment was not created for illegals who wanted to come over here to have babies for birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment was never created for that. They found a loophole in the system, and Mexicans and Latinos took full advantage of something that was created for foundational Black Americans. I spoke on the civil rights movement. When Mexicans were fighting for so-called civil rights, they were fighting to be recognized as white because they felt like being legally white was the only way that they would have equal opportunities. So with that being said, if you look at the 1930s, Mexicans actually fought to be legally white. They didn't fight so that Mexicans could have the same rights as white people. They said, no, we're gonna fight to be accepted as white. So you didn't fight for minorities, you didn't fight for people of color, you fought to be legally white. They fought for white acceptance. And that ain't no disrespect. I'm just telling you the facts about history. When black people, on the other hand, fought for civil rights, we fought for all people of color, all minorities, so that all people of color would have the same rights or similar rights to as white people do in this country. We didn't fight to be white. We didn't fight for white acceptance. We fought for black people and people of color to have civil rights and equal opportunities in this country. That's the difference between the civil rights that foundational black Americans fought for. It's the difference between what the Mexicans and Latinos fought. It's completely different. Mexicans and Latinos fought to be legally white. Black people fought for minorities and people of color to have equal opportunities in the country. So the civil rights that we fought for was completely different when you get down to the bottom of it. See, I showed you the LULAC video of the president of the LULAC organization saying that Mexicans belong to the Caucasian race, blacks are on their own, let them fight their own battles, and we don't mind fighting our own battles. So the LULAC organization leaders fought for the Mexicans to be legally white. They felt like that's the only way they can get. They feel like that's the only way that they can gain equal opportunities. Then when you look at the music we making, our music, people make money off of our music. So I'm just being real. I say this to the Latino community. You guys have never fought for anything that benefit us. But Black Americans, we fought for plenty of things that benefit you guys. I'm just giving you the facts about history. So when you think about a black and brown coalition, that'll never happen until Mexicans fix the anti-blackness that's in their culture. There'll never be no black and brown coalition, not collectively. You might have individuals that are Mexicans and blacks who are cool as individuals, but collectively, no. And I don't see Mexicans fixing the anti-blackness within their culture because for the most part, they're in complete denial about it in the first place.
There's a lot of controversial things, but there are some times he's on point, and I think that's with everybody. You're not always going to agree with what they say, but I do believe that we can make some improvements on this black brown because witnessing the Florences and the East Coasts, and this is a truth that still holds right now. It's been 4 years, and they have no shootings, no homicides, and what's crazy is the people that were involved in the truth to make it happen. On the East Coast crypt, this guy's in prison now, and on the Florence side, Bobo, he's deceased. But they still figured out a way for this truce to continue.
And that's impressive. You know what I mean? More power to them. I'm glad it's, you know what I mean?
But isn't that a sign that it can happen? We just need more people on the page, on the same page. And it was really
a black man in Mexico abolished slavery. That's what you're not saying. Vincent Guerrero. He's the second president of Mexico, nicknamed El Negro. Why did he fight to abolish slavery? Because he was black and he experienced a lot of anti-black racism in Mexico himself. That's why he pushed so hard to abolish slavery. It took a black man in Mexico to abolish slavery. You forgot to add that. It wasn't you guys are making it seem like a pale-faced Mexican or Spaniard European looking Mexican abolished slavery. No, it was actually an Afro-Mexican who abolished slavery. El Negro, Vincent Guerrero.
Interesting, but we don't really talk about this. One of the motivations behind it is that it's bad for business. If your vado's out there, slanging and banging, the last thing you want to be doing is getting into shootouts with the brothers. Right, your priority right now is to sell this sack, to make this money, and to either help your family out or give the money whoever it's owed to. And you can't be doing that when you're in shootouts every other week, a couple times a month. That cannot be accomplished.
Right. Now, no, I understand.
So even from the economic side, right, from the business side, from the economic side, even though we're talking about the underground economy, it doesn't make sense to continue to have these conflicts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All the way around, it's a good thing for our gente and for the blacks, you know what I mean, the brothers. Because I've gone to South Central when I was working on a truck, and I went down the wrong street, and I got the windows broken out. There's certain streets you can't go down, you know what I mean?
Hey, it's the same thing. Hey, what about
it goes both ways.
What about the lady that decided I'm going to move into Ramona Gardens, and she got her whole place
That's
firebomb?
a whole different thing.
What do you mean?
We had to talk about that after.
Okay. Well,
there was a
black lady moved to Ramona Gardens.
Yes.
And Ramona Gardens used to have a lot of black people, like 50, like in the 50s and in the 40s or late 40s, early 50s. There were blacks there, but then Mexicans took it all over. And one black lady, I don't know how she ended up moving in there. I think it was Section 8, and they firebombed her.
Yeah, no, no, I know all about that. Right, like right now where we live, there is two black families that moved in. Nobody bugs them. It's the fact that when you're bringing others to that area, then it starts becoming a problem because again, the gangs get involved.
See, now he's not being honest. Alex Alonso just mentioned the black people who got firebombed in East LA. Instead of Sonny saying, you know what, that is racism, Sonny made an excuse for it and said, well, it's when you start bringing other people over there, now the gangs get involved. Now, these were civilians. These weren't gang members. These wasn't gang members. So you can't say they were bringing other people over there. So what you're doing is you're making an excuse for Ku Klux Klan behavior. That's what you just did. Oh, well, they started bringing other people over, and that's why the gangs got involved. That's not what happened. The Mexicans didn't want blacks living in their community. There's a thing called ethnic cleansing. The guys in prison told a lot of Mexican barrios to rid their communities of black people, and that's exactly what they did in East LA, the Ramona Garden Housing Projects. The Avenues gang in Northeast LA, they was attacking black people just for living over there. So that had nothing to do with gangs. Clearly, that was racism. That had nothing to do with gangs. Clearly, it was racism. Ku Klux Klan behavior. Excuses will not be tolerated. I see through these excuses. Oh, well, that's because other people came. Nah, it had nothing to do with gangs, Sonny. It was racism.
Nobody bugs them. It's the fact that when you're bringing others to that area, then it starts becoming a problem because again, the gangs get involved. There is two black families that moved in. Nobody bugs them. It's the fact that when you're bringing others to that area, then it starts becoming a problem because again, the gangs get involved. The gangs from that area don't want them all coming into our area because then they start kicking it, posting up, thinking it's their area.
What about when
And that's with any gang.
there were some blacks that moved into the Avenues areas? This is late '90s. We're talking about 20-something years ago. These black dudes weren't even in the gang. They just lived there. I think it was three brothers over the course of a year, all got gunned down. They weren't from no gang.
I heard
You know,
about
so that's. I mean, we got so many examples. We can go back and forth
Yeah.
on this all day long. It's got to come to an end.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The Avenue thing. I don't know how it locked up.
Well,
All I know is
I will say this on one of the Avenues things. One of the brothers thought he was going to sell weed. I mean, he was just selling like dime bags of weed. Of course, you're not supposed to sell anything, but you shouldn't get a death sentence because you deciding to sell a little bit of weed, in the neighborhood. But we all know you don't sell.
These was just regular people, man. You know how many, you know all the drugs that Mexicans sell in black neighborhoods. So that was an excuse for anti-black racism. Oh, they were selling a little bit of weed. Do you know Mexicans move into black neighborhoods and start barrios and sell drugs? And this is what I'm saying to black people. If you gonna go hard at a black person not being from your hood and selling drugs in your community, then Mexicans shouldn't be able to push no dope in your community either. This is what makes black people look weak. And I'm not condoning violence, but I gotta be honest all across the board with this one. If you move to a black neighborhood in South Central Compton and you're not from that gang and you decide you want to sell some work or sell some drugs over there, they're gonna press you, right? But guess what? You got Mexicans who live in that same community who are selling drugs and making money off of the drug trade. So if you're not going to press Mexicans for selling dope in your community, why do you want to press me for selling dope in your community? Now I can understand if you said can't nobody move dope over here but this particular gang. This is our hood. But when you allow Mexicans and Mexican gangs to sell dope in your community, it looks pretty damn weak on your part. Now, I said it before and I say it again. If a black person moved to East LA and tried to sell dope, the Mexicans ain't gonna go for it. They're gonna run your ass clean out of town. You go to Northeast LA as a black person trying to sell a nigger bag or a dime bag, the Mexicans ain't gonna go for it. You're gonna have a major problem. Mexicans are very racist and territorial, especially in East LA, La Puente, El Monte, Northeast LA. They're very racist in those areas. Why? Because there's no black gangs over there. You don't have a sizable black population over there. So anytime you're living in a predominant Hispanic, Mexican, Latino community like that, you're gonna run into a lot of issues dealing with those Mexican gangs who don't want blacks living in their neighborhoods in the first place.
where you don't live or where you don't have, that's not your area. So on that one example, I don't want to say I don't want to say I get it, I understand it, but that was it's just unfortunate that this type of conflict is existing, and that's the '90s, and here we are in 2023, and nothing's gotten better.
Yeah, yeah. No, you know what? I'll tell you right now, from when I was younger to now, I think it's more racial now than it's ever been. Because when I was a youngster, I got called a spick
By the whites in
by the
Burbank,
whites
yeah.
in Burbank. I remember if you tell me that story, I told you that story. So I can say in my life, I've probably been discriminated 5 times in my life.
They already have Mexicans in Missouri. They might not be posted in the inner city of St. Louis, but you have Mexicans who are there. They're not. The difference is they're not in Missouri in large numbers like they are in California. You have to understand California is a border state, and Mexicans been here for pretty much forever. Their population just gotten bigger over the last few decades because of illegal immigration and anchor babies. But Missouri is not a border state, so they're not going to be able to overpopulate Missouri like you can overpopulate a place like Texas or California. Plus, with the new immigration laws, is making it harder for new immigrants to come over there and pretty much do what they've been doing in California. So you got to say thanks to Donald Trump for being strict on these immigration policies, stopping millions of illegals from crossing the border into our country.
I'm not the type of person that thinks, oh, because that dude got at me, it's racial. Or he said something to me, it's racial. I look at it like, okay, I got tattoos. Look at the way I look. I wouldn't want me around my kids or certain areas thinking his dude's up to no good. But I can understand that. But I don't think everything's racial either. And that's the problem with everybody takes it right away that it's racial.
Oh, it is racial. What do you mean? You don't think it's racial? When you firebomb somebody's house, that's racial. When you're writing NK on the wall, like the Mexicans, when you're writing NK on the wall, like the Mexicans in Long Beach and Mexicans in many other areas, the Hawaiian Gardens, Azusa 13, that's racial. That's not gang banging. See, this is why you can't get nowhere with a lot of Mexicans because they're not honest about what's going on. It takes a black man to be brutally honest about what's really going on without sugarcoating nothing. What do you mean you can't call it racism? The Mexican mafia specifically told certain Mexican gangs to rid their communities of blacks. That's racism. Firebombing somebody's house just because they're of a different race and they live in your community, that's racism. NK on the wall, that's racism. Mayate, that's racism. So if you want to talk about honesty, Sonny ain't got an honest bone in his body. And it ain't just Sonny, it's a whole lot of them who think like this. There's a whole lot of them who make excuses for their racism. He fixed his mouth to say, no, 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 it's not racism. What? Do you think we're stupid?
Because of this, it's because of that. No, it's not. It's not always based on race. A lot of it has a lot of things to do with things that somebody else doesn't know. Problem with everybody takes it right away that it's
You
racial.
know, a Mexican dude told me the same thing. He came to my chat when I did a stream about this 2 years ago. He said, no, no, Red, you got to understand things were happening. When I was showing you the Canoga Park gang and the San Fernando Valley, how racist they was towards blacks, how they was writing NK on the wall, he tried to say, no, 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 Red, it was that's not true. No, 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 that's not true. Other things were happening. I'm like, bro, you don't even have black gangs in those areas. What are you talking about? You're making excuses for your people's racism, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to call it exactly how it is.
Oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. No, it's not. It's not always based on race. But I can understand that. But I don't think everything's racial either. And that's the problem with everybody takes it right away that it's racial. Oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. No, it's not. It's not always based on race. A lot of it has a lot of things to do with things that somebody else doesn't know about.
Yeah, that does happen a lot, but I know specifically, like in the Torrance area, the Mexicans were attacking blacks down there, and these aren't these aren't black gang members. When you see blacks that are not gang members now being targeted, then you know this must be race. Now, if it's a gang thing, like in Long Beach,
Even gangs have a racial. Even gang beef has a racial undertone to it. But if you go to like Torrance, Long Beach, certain areas of LA, it's blatant racism, homie. There's no way you can get around that. You got to be a dummy to not come to the understanding that it's racism, right? Don't let these people gaslight you by telling you, oh, it ain't racism, it's just gangs. Listen, you seen the LA City Council and what they said about black people. These are Mexican politicians. Look at what they said about black people. They got caught on audio talking greasy about black folks. These are politicians. So what does that tell you? It's embedded in their culture. There's no way you can have a black and brown coalition until Mexicans address the anti-blackness that comes from their culture. A black and brown coalition is impossible. It'll never happen because, for one, Mexicans are not honest about the anti-black racism that comes from their culture. They're not honest about the anti-blackness that comes from their communities in East LA, La Puente, El Monte, Northeast LA, certain areas in the San Fernando Valley. They're not honest about it. So if they're not honest about it, then it's impossible to have any type of alliance with them. Like I said earlier, black people don't even need to focus on that. Black people need to focus on being more unified and having more love for one another. It is a waste of time trying to convince somebody who's racist that they shouldn't be racist. I wouldn't even waste my time trying to convince somebody that they should feel a certain way about me. Hey, man, it is what it is. I accept things for what they are. I'm not going to waste time trying to convince somebody who's racist towards me that somehow they need to like me. Man, you crazy.
there's a possibility that the black brown conflict in Long Beach is all gang.
Yeah.
It might not have anything to do with race, but of course,
Now you're not being real, Alex Alonso. How you gonna say it has nothing to do with gangs? The Longos specifically in Long Beach write NK. That's N word. That's that's N word unaliver. This is what I don't like about a lot of my LA people. Just tell the truth. Don't tell the half truth. Tell the whole truth. Mexicans in Long Beach are very racist. Those are some of the most racist Mexicans all over LA County. The Longos gang in Long Beach, right? They run around writing NK. It don't get more racist than that, except for the fire bombings that took place in East LA.
blacks down there, and these aren't black gang members. When you see blacks that are not gang members now being targeted, then you know this must be race. Now, if it's a gang thing, like in Long Beach, there's a possibility that the black brown conflict in Long Beach is all gang.
Yeah.
It might not have anything to do with race, but of course, you can't ignore
Race is coming into it.
race
now.
is coming into it. But in some areas, it's just tell me why they firebombed that black lady in the projects over there. She wasn't in no gang, you know. So
Oh, you don't know that.
I think
No, I'm messing with you.
yeah. Hey, and you know what's interesting?
No, you don't play. You don't play around with that. I'm just joking. He said, well, what Alex Alonso said, okay, in Long Beach is a gang thing. No, when you write an NK, it's no longer just a gang thing. It's racial when you write NK. Then he said, well, he spoke about the East LA thing because there's no way you can deny that that was racism, that it was racial. Sonny said, no. Alex said the lady wasn't in no gang. Sonny said, you don't know that. See, he's making jokes about blatant racism. We all know that lady wasn't in the gang. You don't have black gangs in East LA. These were just regular civilians. So the reality is this: Mexicans are going to deny their racism, or what they're going to do is they're going to come up with a false equivalence by saying, well, blacks did this, so you guys are racist towards us too. So either they'll deny their racism or they'll make a false equivalence comparing something that blacks did to a Mexican as if it's the same as them firebombing a black person just for living in their community. That's what they do. They'll gaslight you, they'll deny racism, or they'll come with a false equivalence. That's exactly what they do. I've been studying this for way too long.
Been a lot of indictments by the feds and the fact in that case that I just mentioned, they indicted because it's on camera too. They had camera. They indicted like 3 or 4 Mexican dudes on that, and they indicted the guys down in 204th Street. And if you notice, all the indictments are of Latinos getting indicted.
Yeah, it's not the
No
blacks.
blacks have been indicted for any hate crime.
And that's not right. That you know that's not right.
Well,
That's just,
I would say you have to show me an example of where a black attacked non-Mexican, a Mexican that's not affiliated with the streets, like a straight up. Well, I guess when you see the Elota woman and things like that, yeah. Fortunately, no one's been killed in those, but you know what? Those might be those are racially motivated.
and then
No, they're not racially motivated. These are youngsters. Nobody's giving them the orders to do these things. See, the difference between a youngster robbing somebody who looks like an easy lick, you can't compare that to a group of people who are taking direct orders from guys in prison, from organized criminals in prison. Mexican street gangs are taking orders from organized crime, which means somebody orchestrated it, which means somebody gave them the okay for these firebombers. Somebody gave them the okay to attack random black civilians in your community. That's organized crime. Now, when you have some knuckleheads who are just robbing people who look like easy money, you can't compare that to a firebombing in East LA. It's not the same. That is a false equivalence. Mexicans extort other Mexicans in their community. Mexicans extort Mexican gangbangers. They extort mom and pop businesses in their community. So once again, that is a false equivalence. You can't compare a group of knuckleheads who rob somebody for some easy money. You can't compare that to a group of people in Los Angeles firebombing somebody's apartment just for being black in the Latino community. That is a false equivalence. Nobody instructed those youngsters to harm Mexicans. Black people never gave our people the okay to just harm Mexicans for whatever. We don't have organized crime in our community. We don't have big homies in prison that are telling us to attack random Mexican civilians in our community. That's not happening. That doesn't go down in black communities. False equivalence.
they need to understand that. Okay, a lot. What people don't understand is when you do something like that and you say a racial slur, it automatically.
And they got DP'd on camera. The guys who were doing that, the black people kind of dealt with them. My thing is this: you never seen none of these Mexicans on the street get dealt with for the things they did to blacks. Black people had no business. The Hoovers had no business recording that DP. They had no business doing that, right? Because my thing is this: if you're not going to discipline your homies for robbing and unaliving black people, what do you look like disciplining your homies for robbing a random Mexican? And it wasn't racial. It was just like, hey, it's an easy lick. I need the money. You in my hood, give it up. Mexicans are in no position to tell blacks what to do in our community. Why? Because Mexican prison gangs extort Mexican gangbangers. They got to pay taxes to the big homies in prison. Mexican vendors and Mexican communities get taxed by the gangbangers. So Mexicans are robbing and extorting their own people in their own barrios. So don't tell black people about what we could do in our own communities. If somebody looks like an easy lick in our community, it is what it is. You're not going to come and dictate to me and tell me nothing. I'm not saying that it's right for you to rob anybody. I'm just making a point here. If blacks are not going to discipline their people for robbing and unaliving blacks, what do you look like disciplining a black person for robbing a Mexican? That is crazy.
Goes into an indictment.
But those attacks of the vendors, that those are individual black dudes. It's not the gang.
Right.
The individuals.
But I've seen blacks attack whites and other nationalities and say racial terms, but they still don't get indicted. And that's not fair. Which, like I said, if it's what.
That's because it's not a collective effort. See, when you see Mexicans attacking blacks, they're getting the okay from the big homies. That's linked to organized crime. Now, when you had a bunch of teenagers who are just robbing people because for easy money, you can't compare that to a group of people who operate under organized crime. It's not the same. What you have is individual knuckleheads who are committing crimes. The black gang didn't come together collectively and say, we're going to do this to this particular group of people. Same thing with black people and white people. Black people never organize against white people to harm white people just for being white. You might have individuals who victimize people of other races, but it's not a collective thing in the black community. We don't come together collectively to say, let's rid our communities of Mexicans. Let's harm white people. You don't see organized groups of black people coming together to do that, but you do have Serranos and Southsiders who are organized groups who take orders from people in prison. They did get the okay to attack random blacks in their communities. That's It's completely different from a lone wolf knucklehead who was just robbing somebody for easy money. That is a false equivalence. You can't even compare that. White people had the Ku Klux Klan. White people created laws to oppress black people. Blacks ain't never created no laws to oppress no Mexicans or no whites. If anything, Mexicans benefit from our civil rights struggle. So we have fought for things that benefit Mexicans, but Mexicans have never fought for anything that benefits us. So that is a false equivalence once again. Mexicans are known to extort mom and pop businesses in their community. So how dare you tell blacks that it's a problem when they rob and extort people in their community? That makes no sense. I said it before and I'm gonna say it again. Black people, if you're not gonna DP your homies for robbing and unaliving black people, you look crazy for disciplining your homies if they decided to rob a Mexican. At that point, you look crazy. I can see if you was DPing your homies for robbing other black people, but you DP your homies for robbing a Mexican. Even though Mexicans extort and rob their own people in their communities, that is crazy.
The thing about this, okay, if people want everything to be equal, then everything needs to be equal.
Individuals.
But I've seen blacks attack whites and other nationalities and say racial terms, but they still don't get indicted. And that's not fair. Which, like I said, if
black people have went to prison for things they never did. White people would just say that a black person done something and they served a lot of prison time. So what do you mean fair? This is why we'll never really have no unity with Mexicans, because they're not honest. This fool don't understand history. What do you mean fair? America has never been fair to black people. You know how many black people serve prison time just because of a white person lied? Especially if you go back to the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of black people who lost their lives based on a lie that a white person told. You can't even mention fair and black people in the same sentence. What are you talking about, Willis? You sound crazy. You can't even mention fair and black people in the same sentence in this country. This fool sound crazy talking about fair.
what
Those are racially motivated.
and they need to understand, like, okay, a lot what people don't understand is when you do something like that and you say a racial slur, it automatically goes into an indictment.
But those attacks of the vendors, those are individual black dudes. It's
Right.
not the gang.
Right.
The individuals.
But I've seen blacks attack whites and other nationalities and say racial terms, but they still don't get indicted. And that's not fair. Which, like I said, if it's what the thing about this, okay, if people want everything to be equal, then everything needs to be equal. Gay pride.
You got a Mexican dude saying I'm racist. Why? Because I'm exposing the racism coming from your community full of hate. See, once again, that's gaslighting. He's saying that I'm full of hate for exposing the anti-blackness that comes from his community. You talk about gaslighting and deflecting.
And I'm not trying to get into it because I don't want to cause a problem. But let's say they have a gay pride parade.
Yeah.
Where do they have a straight parade? If you want to be equal, then maybe you should be equal.
I mean, the straights could start a parade if they want, but I
I
don't.
know you know what I'm saying though, right? It's just if you're gonna be equal.
Sonny, America has never been equal and fair to black people. White people have never went through Jim Crow in this country. White people never had to experience slavery and Jim Crow in this country. So what do you mean fair? Black people ain't never created laws to oppress white people, but whites have created laws to oppress blacks. So you can't even mention fair and black people in the same sentence. You sound crazy. This country has never been fair. And I'm not crying about it. I'm just speaking the obvious. I'm just giving you the irrefutable facts. If you don't believe me, study history. This country was built on systemic racism and systematic white supremacy. That's what this country was built on. So I don't want to hear you talking about fair. You sound crazy talking about fair in a country that was built on systemic racism and systematic white supremacy. You got the nerve to mention fair? Oh my God.
If it's good for you and it's good for me,
I don't think it's equal
good for
because
everybody.
we're talking about a minority compared to a majority.
All right, let's go to the next clip. This is crazy. Straight buffoonery. Fair. This country is not built on fairness, man. Stop it.
Exist.
Now here's American Cholo. This is American
Here
Cholo.
that was, you think we as brown people killed more black people?
Now you're gonna hear him gaslight and make excuses. Every race harms their own more than anybody else. But he's saying that to deflect from the issue of racism that's coming from his community. I want you to hear the gaslighting and all the deflections that American Cholo was going to come with. Shout out to Go Gadget for blessing the super chat. Let's get back to the content. Shout out to Alex Alonzo, Street TV, man.
That and that year, whatever year that was, you think we as brown people killed more black people on a gang basis, or we killed more of ourselves on a gang basis?
Definitely brown on brown would be higher.
You know better than anybody else, there's certain things to the game, and it's not fucking a racial thing, because we kill ourselves much easier in our own fucking hoods for some stupid shit.
How you gonna say it's not racism when your people are writing NK on the wall and firebombing people apartments just for living in your community? What he's trying to say is, well, Mexicans unalive more Mexicans, so it ain't racism. Listen, homie, that's a clearly that's a deflection. You're gaslighting. Every race underlies their own more than any other race of people, but at the same time, we're not going to deny obvious racism, blatant racism that comes from your community. You're not going to use the fact that you guys unalive each other more to deflect the fact that you guys have a lot of racism, anti-black racism in your communities, in your culture. You're not going to use that to deflect. You're not going to use that to gaslight us. If that's the case, you might as well say, well, since black people unalive each other so much, another race can't complain about what black people do to them because black people unalive each other so much. You see how stupid that sounds? You don't care how much black people unalive each other. If black people did something wrong to your people, you're going to point it out. You're not going to excuse it and sweep it underneath the rug by saying, well, blacks do harm each other more than anybody else, so I am not going to talk about what they did to my people. I'm going to ignore that. This is the same guy who went up to No Jumper with 50 Mexicans over the Ay Caramba video that Tiger made. Because if he truly believed in what he was saying, you know what he would have said? Well, blacks unalive each other so much, there's no need for us to complain about Ay Caramba video. No, he didn't say that. He went on a Million Mexican Man March, and he went up to he went up to No Jumper deep with a gang of Mexicans to confront Adam because he felt that the raza was somehow being disrespected. The hypocrisy. He didn't stop for 1 second to say, well, blacks do harm each other so much. Let's forget about the disrespect from the Ay Caramba video. Never mind that. But he's telling us that we have no right to call Mexicans and Latinos racism because they unalive each other more. The gaslighting, the deflection is crazy.
More of ourselves on a gang basis.
Definitely brown on brown would be higher.
You know better than anybody else, there's certain things to the game, and it's not fucking a racial thing, because we kill ourselves much easier in our own fucking hoods for some stupid shit than killing a black person. That was probably that's low of the totem pole. At the end, it's unfortunate, but as that gang culture in LA, as a brown person, homie, Southern California, nah, man, we destroy our own much more than we destroy brothers, Alonzo. So when I hear that kind of stuff about the Boyle Heights bombing, it kind of like, come on, homies. No, you can't say it as a brother, because we as brown homies, come on, we destroy our own hoods.
Okay, here's a question then.
Okay.
And I believe that this data exists. Who's killed more? Have brown killed more blacks, or have blacks killed more brown when that conflict occurs?
I would think it would be, without even knowing, I would think it would be pretty close, but I would also think it would probably be a little bit more black as a percentage, because there's so many more brown people, but I don't know the data straight up, dude.
Yeah, I don't either. I know that Malcolm Klein used to track this data in the 90s.
Right.
But I don't know what it is now. But There are more Latinos than there are blacks.
Of course.
But
in California.
And yeah, just in Los Angeles County.
Right.
So, but the question is about who victimizes who more. Is it black, brown, or brown, black? I'm gonna do some research on that because
I've got that answer. I got that answer, Alonzo. You know who victimizes who more? Whatever that fucking mother sitting in that living room and that kid's dead. Don't matter if you're brown. It don't matter if you're black. It don't matter if you're Asian. That's who's victimized more. Is that person, that mother, that uncle, that father, that person sitting in that living room. My so-and-so's dead, dude.
Yeah.
And that goes across color lines, brother.
I know. Yeah, of course. The emotional part of it is going to be the same regardless. But statistically, it's important to know. I was just responding to your question. But it was 2014 that the firebombing happened.
Okay.
And apparently it was planned out by a guy named Carlos Hernandez, who was arrested and convicted.
Now you see the excuses, the gaslighting. This is why there'll never be no black and brown coalition, because they're making too many excuses for their blatant racism. There's way too many excuses, man. Way too many.
Sitting in that living room, my so-and-so's dead, dude.
Yeah.
And that goes across color lines, brother.
I know. Yeah, of course. The emotional part of it is going to be the same regardless. But statistically, it's important to know. I was just responding to your question. But it was.
Let me be real. If you look at the hate crimes in California, nobody commits more hate crimes than Mexican Latinos. And their targets are, for the most part, black people, not white people. You would think that white people commit more hate crimes in Cali. No, it's actually Mexicans and Latinos. And it's perpetrated against black people. If you don't believe me, study hate crimes in California. You're going to see who's the biggest perpetrators of it. It's Mexican Latinos. I'm not making this up. You don't believe me? Go look at the stats for yourself.
It was 2014 that the firebombing happened.
Okay.
And apparently it was planned out by a guy named Carlos Hernandez, who was arrested and convicted and was sentenced to, I think, 16 years. Yeah, 16 years in prison. But it's not just it's just not the Boyle Heights firebombing.
Okay.
In the avenues, 3 black dudes were murdered over like a 5 or 6 year period in Northeast LA. I believe 5 or 6 black people were murdered over in 204th Street area by Mexicans, and there's not even a black gang in 204th.
What year was this?
These are all like.
And they're doing this in areas where you don't even have black gangs, so you know it's racial. You can't even make the excuse like, well, we thought he was a gangbanger, because there's no black gangs in those areas. Moving on.
In the avenues, I know Prudhomme. A brother named Prudhomme was killed in 1999, but there were 3 black victims that lived in the Avenues community that were all murdered by Avenues members.
Okay, what year?
Like the
2000?
late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And then also from 1997 to 2001, I think 5 black people were killed in the 204th Street area down in Torrance. By
yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
And I mean, if we look at this historically, that's why a lot of blacks are reluctant to try to condemn. And I'm not defending it.
No.
But
you're helping explain it. I get it.
understand why a black dude will see the elote man get beat up and say, so? You know what I mean?
Nah. Hey, Alonzo, that's where you're wrong, brother.
Your people victimize the elote, man. See, this is what makes them hypocrites. Mexicans extort Latino small businesses in their communities. So how dare you tell the black community that we're wrong for doing something that you're doing in your own community?
The elote man thing has been happening from black people, from our people, since way back when, dude. I'm gonna tell you straight up. And whether you may believe it or not, a lot of brothers, I'm not saying all of them, a lot of brothers that were in the hood, they're fucking bullies, brother. That's what the hood is. No, wait, no, the hood. No, listen, the hood is bullies, homie. Because I'm from the hood. I live in the hood. I'm still in the hood. The hood is bullies, and that's what it's always been. So who's easy prey?
You live in North Hollywood, man. Ain't no hoods in North Hollywood. You got gangs in North Hollywood, but there's no real ghettos in North Hollywood like that. I mean, you have some low income areas, but it's still North Hollywood, man. It's not like the inner city of Los Angeles, like South Central or Comp Watts and South Central. It's not like that, man. This is North Hollywood you're talking about, man. It's a gang of white folks. Who's a gang of white people who live in North Hollywood, bruh.
The guy. We used to tax them. We used to do all this and that. And the brothers have always been like that because even as a young brown man, my grandmother's telling me, be careful with those black guys. Because why? Because sometimes there's a lot of the black culture, the beautiful culture, everything's nice.
See, he just told you. He said his grandparents will tell you, hey, look out for the blacks. Look out for the blacks. At least he was honest about that. We know your grandparents and family told you, hey, stay away from the blacks. Stay away from the blacks. They're bad people. They're criminals. They're dangerous. That's what Latinos taught their children. They told them to stay away from blacks because blacks are this and blacks are that. It's usually associated with something negative. This is why they tell them at an early age, don't you bring a black man home, you stay away from those black people.
But the little secret is that the culture is gangster. That culture, the beautiful culture, even as a young brown man, my grandmother's telling me, be careful with those black guys. Because why? Because sometimes there's a lot of the black culture, the beautiful culture, everything's nice, but the dirty little secret is that the culture is gangstered out, and it's, come on, brother, that's the truth. And a lot of times they got the big bully syndrome. I call it the big black guy syndrome, dude. You got the big black guy syndrome, I'm gonna take your shit. And what ended up happening with us in Southern California, we stopped taking that shit. That's all it was, brother. It was nothing to do with you're black, I hate you. No, it had to do with you're gonna stop bullying me, you're gonna stop pressing up on me, and that's why now the world is a different world. It is, but it's also much more separated. But I believe that now we can actually kind of come together because we respect each other on that same level, homie. Black and brown in California respect each other on the same level that no other state has. And they don't understand us. They say, why do you guys fight? What do you guys this? I believe that black and brown respect each other on a certain level that no other state will ever even figure out. Am I lying?
I think to a
They always do. Of course, he's going to play like he don't know. Stop comparing firebombings to somebody getting beat up and robbed for some pocket change, right? Like, it's not comparable, bro.
certain degree that we're seeing that now. We are seeing that. Hopefully it gets better. But you know, the elote man, and also you're right. The paleta man used to get robbed all the time in the 80s. Yep. and the 90s. Yep. But you know, that guy, he represents a different part of brown culture. Blacks look at that dude as a paisas, you know, which are more vulnerable. I think the paisa guy is a more vulnerable guy in the streets than your typical Chicano or brown dude that knows the streets. So that's one reason why the elote man and the paleta man was always targeted.
But the thing is this: we as a people, brown people, are trying to come together, and we're trying to no, just like the black people. I don't give a shit if you're Haitian. I don't give a fuck this. They do something to a person that's black. We doing the same thing. Like, no, you're brown, homie. And to me, I was born in Honduras. Myself, I was born in Honduras. I was born in a third world country. I came here as a kid. I see those people. I see my neighbors, my uncles, my grandfather, my father-in-law, brother. Those are our elderly. Imagine this, Alonso. If you see a bunch of videos, at least one every 3 weeks, of a black man getting beat up by some cholos, how would you guys feel as a people?
I agree.
But they're not different. They're us. They're, like I say, they're.
Now, he said every week you see a video of a he's over exaggerating. Every video you see an elote man getting beat up by a black person, you're exaggerating, man. Clearly you're exaggerating. You know what I mean? It's just not true. It's not the case. You're making these things up.
Central American Latinos, indigenous.
Now let me show you this right here. This is a clip. This is the Avenues gang, very racist gang in Northeast LA. Check it out.
Neighborhood in Los Angeles, which although diverse, was predominantly Latino during the mid-90s. During this time, the area was controlled by a
Now, this is the Avenues gang. I'm gonna show you a bunch of racially motivated attacks in his area. It's a lot of racially motivated attacks in these areas, and these are Mexican gangs attacking black civilians. Is like I said, you don't have black gangs in these areas. You don't even have a sizable black population in these areas. So what they would do is they would pick on one or two black people who might live in these communities, and then you see the racially motivated attacks that they've done. But check it. This is the Avenues gang in Northeast Los Angeles.
Latino street gang known as the Avenues. Investigators estimated that the Avenues had anywhere from 200 to 300 members, nearly all of them Latino. The gang was made up of several cliques, each claiming its own section of the neighborhood as territory. Among them was Avenues 43, a clique that claimed the area surrounding 43rd Avenue and Highland Park. Key members included Gilbert Lucky Saldana, Alejandro Bird Martinez, Fernando Sneak.
See, Highland Park is where, the guy that called us the African booty scratchers, he's not from the Avenues gang, but he's from another gang in that area. Maybe he is from the Avenues. I don't know. But I know he's from Highland Park. This is Northeast Los Angeles, and it's very racial over there towards black people. But I'm going to show you a long list of hate crimes committed by Mexicans against black civilians in this area. This video is going to prove everything that I've been talking about. See, I've already known about these situations, but for me to find it in the video is just for me to give you proof, for me to give you guys a visual of what's been taking place in these predominant Mexican communities when blacks move there. Let's get it. Bless the like button.
Zares, Porfirio Dreamer Avila, and Jesse Listo Diaz. At the time, Avenues 43 had about 20 to 40 active members. Avenues 43 was closely tied to another clique, Avenues 57, which claimed the area near 57th Avenue. Jose de la Cruz, also known as Clever, was a member of Avenues 57. Avenue members were often seen hanging out nearly every day around Montecito Park, which they controlled. Between 1995 and 2001, more African American families moved into Highland Park, which the gang openly resented. Members made it clear that they hated the increase in black residents and viewed Highland Park as exclusively theirs. The gang felt their community was being invaded. They would go on missions where they would commit crimes, look for ops, and paint graffiti. Much of that graffiti had racist messages and was often sprayed on the homes of black residents. On these missions, members were almost always armed and often carried police scanners. Avenues members would meet regularly to discuss the gang's business and how they wouldn't allow African Americans to, quote, infest their neighborhood. The more the black population grew, the more violence followed. The gang would use whatever means necessary to drive African Americans out of Highland Park, including threats, beatings, robberies, shootings, and even murder. They wanted to make sure black residents couldn't walk the streets, spend time in the local parks, or even pass through the neighborhood. Celeste Schaefer lived in Highland Park with her family from 1987 until 1997, and during that decade, they were relentlessly harassed by members of the Avenues gang. Celeste herself couldn't even run simple errands without being harassed.
Now, I don't know why black people would want to live over there. I would have been strapped. Somebody ran up on me, I would have been at any given second. But there's no reason to live over there because you understand that the people in that community don't like your kind. So why subject yourself to that type of racism, right? Like why live in a community like that? That's like moving to a sundown. Living in the Avenues territory is the equivalent of a black person in the South moving into a sundown town.
Walking to the corner store or stopping at shootings, and even murder. They wanted to make sure black residents couldn't walk the streets, spend time in the local parks, or even pass through the neighborhood. Celeste Schaefer lived in Highland Park with her family from 1987 until 1997, and during that decade, they were relentlessly harassed by members of the Avenues gang. Celeste herself couldn't even run simple errands without being harassed. Walking to the corner store or stopping at a taco truck meant being confronted with slurs. Gang members would call her a black bitch and tell her that she didn't belong in the neighborhood and needed to leave. Her children were also constant targets. Her daughters, Ebony and Celeste, were chased into a store by Avenue's members who were screaming racial slurs at them, but it was her son Don Petrie who suffered the most. Don and his friends were harassed relentlessly. He was chased, assaulted, and constantly called racial slurs, with Avenue's members making it clear that he wasn't welcome in their neighborhood.
See, let me tell you something. Everywhere there's a black gang in Los Angeles, there's a neighboring Mexican gang. So we're not picking on Mexicans in areas where there's no Mexican gangs. Mexicans pick on black people in areas where there's no sizable black population and there's no black gangs in these areas. Everywhere you see a black gang in Los Angeles, you're going to have a neighboring Mexican gang. Straight up like that. Black people share their communities with Mexicans, but you have areas in LA where Mexicans don't have to share their communities with black people. This is why they get so upset when they see a few. This is why they get so upset when they see a few black people who do move to their communities, because they're not used to having black people in their communities, especially in like Highland Park, Northeast LA, East LA, La Puente, El Monte. They're not used to seeing black people in those areas. There's no black gangs. So Mexicans in those areas tend to be very racist towards blacks and territorial.
Years later, Don would identify Gilbert, Alejandro, and Porfirio as some of the gang members who had personally harassed and attacked him. Once at the Montecito Recreation Center, Don and his black friends were playing basketball inside, while Avenue's members gathered outside at the park for a meeting. The man running the gym warned them to stay inside, because in his words, there were going to be problems. Eventually, Don and his friends slipped out the back to avoid getting harassed, but he never felt safe enough to go there again. Another time, Don and his friend Christopher Bowser were walking through a park when an Avenue's member pulled a gun on them, telling them to get out of the neighborhood and never come back. Christopher himself endured more than 5 years of harassment and threats from Avenue's members, because in their words, he was black and had the audacity to walk through the neighborhood like it was his. He was beaten, called racial slurs, and told to stay out of Highland Park, but Christopher refused to move away or spend time in the area. At various bus stops around Highland Park, Don was threatened, told he wasn't welcome, and was even shot at. He stopped using those stops entirely. Outside a movie theater,
See, my thing is this, man. If I was making these things up, then you could say something, but I'm not making any of this stuff up. You could fact check everything that I said. Telling the truth, like, how could you be mad at me for telling the truth? You know what I mean? Now, if I was making these things up, then you can say, okay, that's hatred. But if I'm telling the truth, it's not hatred. I'm just spreading awareness. You can study everything I said and do your own research on it, and you're going to come up with the same thing that I said because I'm telling the truth.
Avenue's members hurled slurs at him and his girlfriend, threw trash cans at them, and ordered them out of the neighborhood. He never returned to that theater. The same happened.
Well, there's no gangbangers in that area to target. Mexicans in certain areas go to war with black gangs, but in this particular area, there are no black gang members. Ain't nothing but black civilians in these neighborhoods. You don't have a sizable black population. You don't have black gangs in these areas. The black population in this area is probably like 1 or 2%, if that. Out of this whole community, you probably had like 3 black families who lived there, maybe a handful of black people who live there. So no, there are no black gang members in these areas. So they're only attacking civilians.
At a grocery store, Don would also be harassed by gang members who were circling the neighborhood in their.
This was happening in the early 2000s, man. I'm just giving you LA's history about the racism. The firebombings in East LA took place in 2014. These and Highland Park, a lot of these racially motivated attacks took place in the 2000s, right? So, and then you got a lot of stuff that's taking place recently. Like if you go to Long Beach, the Longos, the Mexican gangs in Long Beach write NK on the wall to this day. And they're not the only Mexican hood who write NK on the wall. Come on, you guys are in denial.
Their cars. On one occasion, Alejandro jumped out of a car with a gun and chased Don all the way back to his house. In another, gang members drove onto the wrong side of the street just to try to run him over. At a separate time, they tried running over both Don and Christopher when they were walking together. Outside a liquor store, Avenue's members threw bottles at them while shouting slurs and demanding they get out of the neighborhood. Don came home one day to find two chalk body outlines scrawled across his driveway, along with the words Avenues 43rd, N-word stay out, and we don't want you here, N-words. By 1997, the relentless harassment and constant fear became too much. Terrified that her children might one day be killed, Celeste made the decision to move her family out of Highland Park. Around 1997 or 1998, Alejandro, Porfirio, Jesse, and another Avenues member, Merced Cambero Jr., were driving through Highland Park when they saw a black man using a payphone outside Ramona Hall. One of them pointed him out and said, "Look at this f***ing N-word on the phone." They stopped the car and walked over to confront him. Porfirio struck the man in the head with a dent puller. The man tried to run, but the gang members chased him down, and when they caught up with him, they continued beating him. In 1998, at Sycamore Park, Jose and Merced were walking Jose's dog when a black student passed by. Merced suddenly set the dog on him, shouting, "Get him! Get the N-word!" Jose was also yelling racial slurs at the student. Luckily, the student managed to escape before the dog could reach him, and he wasn't physically harmed. In 1999, while hanging out at Montecito Park, Jesse, Gilbert, and Alejandro spotted a homeless black man walking through the park. They looked at each other and said, "Look at this f***ing N-word."
There's no black people in this area, man. I gave you guys an example. This is living in Highland Park is the equivalent of a black person in the South moving to a sundown town. Imagine you as a black person in the deep South. You move your black family to a sundown town. Well, Highland Park is the equivalent of that in California.
Before attacking him. During the beating, Gilbert pistol whipped the man so hard that his gun went off, and
a Mexican vendor in Long Beach. Never heard of it. And I'm pretty sure it's an isolated incident because Mexicans gave their people the okay to attack random black people. Now, when you see black people who are Mexicans, these are individuals who decided to commit a crime for easy money, but it has nothing to do with the hood collectively saying we're going to specifically target Mexicans in this area. That's not happening. So black people don't come together collectively to attack random Mexican people. We don't do that, but Mexicans have conspired to attack random black people in predominant Mexican Latino communities. You know what I mean? Y'all big homies, the big dogs in prison. The big dogs in prison gave you guys the orders to attack random black people in majority Mexican communities. They call it ethnic cleansing. Let's get rid of, let's run all these black people out of our communities. And there's not a lot of black people in these communities to begin with. You don't even have black gangs in these communities. So you're attacking innocent, harmless people. No black gangs in these areas. You don't even have a sizable black population. Highland Park is the equivalent to a sundown town in the deep South.
Sound of the gunshot caused them to scatter and run. There were other incidents at Montecito Park as well. Once, Avenues members stormed into the gym where African Americans were playing basketball. They shouted slurs at them and eventually chased them out of the gym and into the street. On the night of April 18th, 1999, Gilbert, Merced, Alejandro, Fernando, Jesse, and Jose piled into a stolen Chevy van, carrying with them spray paint and a police scanner. Their plan for the night was to commit crimes, spray paint walls, and maybe even find some ops. Gilbert had a 9mm Ruger handgun, Merced had a .357 revolver, and Jose had a shotgun. Alejandro drove the van with Fernando riding shotgun. They spent hours cruising through Highland Park, stopping now and then to scrawl graffiti on walls. Eventually, they decided to call it a night and started heading back toward 43rd Avenue. But around 3:30 a.m., as they turned on to 52nd Avenue, Alejandro spotted Kenneth Wilson, a black man, trying to park his Cadillac after dropping off his nephew, Julius Williams, who had been with him at a club earlier that night. Pointing Kenneth out, Alejandro reportedly said, "Hey, you guys want to kill an N-word?" The others agreed without hesitation. Kenneth wasn't an op, and they didn't know him at all. Their main issue with him was his race. Alejandro double-parked the van. Gilbert, Merced, and Jose then jumped out with their guns, while Alejandro, Fernando, and Jesse stayed behind in the van to act as lookouts. At first, Kenneth's Cadillac pulled away, but then he circled back, making a U-turn and driving slowly down 52nd Avenue toward the van. Then the three opened fire. Merced fired once with his .357, hitting Kenneth in the back of the neck. Jose unloaded 5 shotgun blasts into the Cadillac, and Gilbert fired at the car twice with his Ruger. The Cadillac swerved and crashed into a parked car. Merced's single bullet had severed Kenneth's carotid artery. He died within minutes. Afterward, the shooters ran back to the van and drove off to Ulysses Street, where Gilbert and Alejandro lived. On the way, Merced bragged that he shot first and hit Kenneth, saying that by the time the other guys fired their guns, Kenneth was already dead. Gilbert hid the guns at his house while Alejandro and Fernando got rid of the van. When the police got to the crime scene, they noticed that the Cadillac had a bunch of bullet holes and shotgun damage. The rear window was shot out. There were bullet marks on the trunk and the right rear side of the car, and a bullet hole in the rear passenger side door window. Inside the car, investigators found shotgun pellets, fragments of bullet jackets, and shell casings. A firearms examiner later confirmed the 3 different weapons that were used in the shooting. After the shooting, Gilbert told his girlfriend, Anita Montano, that the police were looking for him for the murder and called Kenneth a derogatory racial slur in Spanish. Just 2 months before Kenneth was killed, on February 21, 1999, Renee and Jaime Cerda were murdered by Saul Laudello, a member of the White Fence Gang. Saul was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole for those killings. After the Cerda murders, Saul testified that he sold several firearms to Gilbert, who he first met in county jail back in 1997. Among the guns he sold was a 9mm Ruger. Gilbert himself admitted that he bought the weapon from Saul, and Jose.
See, they was just shooting black people for the hell of it. They were just shooting black people for the hell of it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't no gang conflict. There was no altercation between blacks and Mexicans. There's no black gangs in this area. So they were just shooting at black people because they're just racist pieces of crap. Right? And then you got people like Sonny, oh no, it's not always racism. Man, please. What else is it? What else is it? Man, please.
They also recalled Gilbert telling him that he'd gotten the 9mm from a White Fence Gang member he met in prison in 1997. Ballistics confirmed that the same 9mm Ruger Gilbert used in Kenneth's murder was the same weapon used.
Now we got another problem here. There's 300-some people watching, but we only got 100-something likes. What's wrong with that picture? I got to tell you guys the same thing every day. It sounds like a broken record. We got 370-some people watching, but only 170-something likes. I know we get a lot of hate watchers, but we got enough of my people who really rock with me who could bless the like button. It's pretty simple. Make the live viewers, make the likes add up to the live viewers.
In the Cerda killings, the bullets and shell casings from Kenneth's Cadillac were fired from the very same Ruger that was used to kill the Cerdas. In July 2000, Tanya Alleman and her black boyfriend Mike Sampson were walking through Highland Park when a car full of Hispanic men drove past and yelled a racial slur in Spanish at Mike. The couple kept walking, but the car quickly pulled over. 2 men jumped out, and one of them was holding a red metal club. As they approached Mike, one shouted, "F***ing N-word," and threatened to kill him. Tanya ran across the street to call the police. When she looked back, she saw Mike being beaten with the club. After the assault, the attackers ran back to their car and sped off. Later, Tanya and Mike gave police a detailed description of the men and their vehicle.
They'll they'll gaslight you as if you're so dumb that you don't know what racism looks like and like you don't know what it is. You really think we don't know what racism is? You really think we're that crazy to the point to where we don't know what it looks like? Man, please.
Same night, an LAPD officer spotted a car that matched the description and pulled it over. One passenger bolted and ran, but the driver, Fernandez,
Dude keep saying all after the riots. Yes, but guess what? The riots, the 1992 riots, had nothing to do with Mexicans, and you guys were some of the main people out there looting. If you from LA and you seen a gang of Mexicans in 1992 rioting, they were just freeloading. Mexicans were opportunists. They had nothing to do. Listen, the Rodney King beating had nothing to do with the Mexican community. The Mexicans used the riots as an opportunity to steal free stuff, to get free stuff. I've seen Mexicans stealing refrigerators, breaking into furniture stores, appliance stores. I've seen Mexicans with couches on their trucks, and man, Mexicans was doing a whole lot of looting and stealing, and the 1992 riots had nothing to do with them. So in reality, they were just opportunists. Once again, they're using the black struggle to get free things for themselves. They're using the black struggle to benefit themselves. Why else would the streets be full of Mexicans in 1992 rioting and looting? There was no black and brown coalition. Mexicans didn't give a damn about police beating on a black man. They could care less. Their main goal was to get free stuff. We're going to use the black struggle to get us some free stuff. And that's exactly what the Mexican did in 1992. It's like, because when I seen all those Mexicans out there looting and stealing, I'm like, oh, I knew what it was. And I was just a kid. But I was smart enough back then to know that Mexicans were just being opportunists, using the black struggle to get free furniture, to get uh, uh, a whole lot of free stuff. That's like blacks going to East LA to loot and riot because the police beat up Hector or Juan or something, and we go out there to loot and steal, and it had nothing to do with us. So they were just being opportunists in 1992. The riots had nothing to do with them at all.
stayed behind and identified himself. Inside the car, officers found 2 police scanners in the same red metal club that Tanya described. At a separate incident, Jesse and Gilbert saw a black teenager standing outside a Jack in the Box in Highland Park. Jesse walked up to him and said, "What's up?" an N-word before pulling a knife and trying to stab him. The teenager spotted the blade just in time and ran straight into the street and into oncoming traffic to get away. Another resident, Dagan Wallace, also became a target of Avenue's harassment. On September 3rd, 2000, Dagan was in his yard listening to music when several gang
Yeah, man. If you go back to 1992, Mexicans were stealing from the shoe stores, from furniture stores. They were doing a whole lot of stealing, and it had nothing to do with them. They once again using the black struggle to get free shit, using the black struggle to benefit themselves. The 1992 riots is another prime example of that. They were just freeloading. Oh, we're gonna go out there and steal and get us some free stuff. We don't like black people, but we will steal to get us some free stuff.
members walked up to him and made clear who they were. One pulled out a gun, pointed it at him, and said, "What's up, N-word?" Terrified, Dagan ran inside and called the police. A short time later, he was confronted again.
Mexicans was out there looting to get free stuff. That's what happened. Period. Now you're talking about Damian Football Williams who pulled people out of cars. Well, some of those Mexicans looked white. You looked white, you was getting attacked. But that wasn't happening in most areas. And 90% of all Los Angeles, blacks and Mexicans were pretty much out there together. Now, I don't know what happened on Normandy and Florence. You got to ask somebody who's from A-Trade Gangsta Crip about that, why Damian Football Williams was snatching Mexicans up out of the car during the 1992 riots. That was isolated to one area. It wasn't like blacks were just snatching Mexicans up out of their cars and beating them up all across the city. That was isolated to one intersection in one particular area. So let's get the record straight. Now, I don't know. Maybe you got to ask somebody from A-Trade Gangsta about that. But if you look at the city as a whole, you didn't really see any of that going on. It was just blacks looting, and you had a gang of Mexicans out there looting and stealing. Mexicans used the 1992 riots as an opportunity to get free stuff. Let's use the black struggle to get free furniture and free house. That's free everything. You think Mexicans really cared about Rodney Dangerfield, as they would say? Do you really think Mexicans cared about Rodney King? Absolutely not. Mexicans were just looting to get free stuff, man.
Again, this time as he was getting out of his car. The gang hurled more slurs, even calling him a monkey. In the fall of 2000, Jimmy Israel was living in Highland Park with his brother and sister, Patricia. The siblings often used walkie-talkies to stay in touch, but their conversations were constantly hijacked by voices identifying themselves as Avenue's members. On one occasion, the intruder cut in and
See, get them likes up, man. When I do shows like this, I shouldn't have to ask people to make sure that the likes match the live viewers. I shouldn't have to say that. The content that I deliver alone, the knowledge pertaining to history, the issues when it comes to racism from the brown community, I shouldn't have to tell nobody to bless the like button. This content is fire because I'm talking about something that a lot of LA cats refuse to talk about. They get online and they talk about gangbanging and the problem that they have with another black person all day. Most of these black dudes in LA, they get online to beef with other black people. They're not sharing no valuable information. They're just gossiping about gang politics all day, but they're not uplifting the people. They're not educating the people. They're talking about ignorant gang shit all day and beefs that they have with another black person. So if you will hit the like button for that raggedy ass content, you look crazy for not blessing the like button and not supporting content like this. I'm just saying.
said, "You N-words need to get off our block. We are going to burn down your house." Similar threats were made, again, more slurs. He was in his yard listening to music when several get described. At a separate incident, Jesse and Gilbert saw a black teenager standing outside a Jack-in-the-Box in Highland Park. Jesse walked up to him and said, "What's up?" an N-word before pulling a knife and trying to stab him. The teenager spotted the blade just in time and ran straight into the street and into oncoming traffic to get away. Another resident, Dagan Wallace, also became a target of Avenue's harassment. On September 3, 2000, Dagan was in his yard listening to music when several gang members walked up to him and made it clear who they were. One pulled out a gun, pointed it at him, and said, "What's up, N-word?" Terrified, Dagan ran inside and called the police. A short time later, he was confronted again, this time as he was getting out of his car. The gang hurled more slurs, even calling him a monkey. In the fall of 2000, Jimmy Israel was living in Highland Park with his brother and sister, Patricia. The siblings often used walkie-talkies to stay in touch, but their conversations were constantly hijacked by voices identifying themselves as Avenue's members. On one occasion, the intruder cut in and said, "You N-words need to get off our block. We are going to burn down your house." Similar threats were made again and again. Jimmy eventually realized that the people breaking into their calls were the Hispanic men who gathered regularly at a house just down the street. Then in October 2000, the threats turned into violence. Patricia and Jimmy's nephew were riding bikes near that same house the gang members gathered at. Then Alejandro
We need 100 more people to bless the like button. Now, I seen we had some more. We still need 100 plus more people to bless that like button for this fire content that we give you on a daily basis. Let's get it.
came out, knocked Patricia off her bike, and began beating and stomping on her. Jimmy quickly rode his bike to his sister and rushed over to help, but Alejandro pulled a box cutter and swung it at him. Jimmy dodged the blade and took cover behind a car, while another gang member continued assaulting his sister. During the attack, the man with the box cutter shouted, "I am tired of seeing you N-words on my block. It's time for you N-words to get out of here. I don't want you over here." When Jimmy got home, his mother called the police, but even the responding officer faced harassment. When he went to the gang house to investigate, members mocked him, calling him an N-word while laughing. Pedro Avalar, a Latino man, had been living in Highland Park since around 1994. He was close friends with Christopher Bowser. Although Pedro knew about the Avenues and was even friendly with some of its members, his friendships with black people made him a target. Whenever Pedro walked around Highland Park with Christopher or his other black friends, Avenues members would go after him. They called him an N-word lover and warned that if he didn't stop hanging around with black people, they would kill him. Once, when Pedro and Christopher were driving,
See, a Mexican dude got death threats from his own people. Hey, man, you better stop hanging around those N words, right? We're going to get you if you keep hanging around those blacks, fool.
to get out of here. I don't want you over here. When Jimmy got home, his mother called the police. But even the responding officer faced harassment. When he went to the gang house to investigate, members mocked him, calling him an N-word while laughing. Pedro Avalar, a Latino man, had been living in Highland Park since around 1994. He was close friends with Christopher Bowser. Although Pedro knew about the avenues and was even friendly with some of its members, his friendships with black people made him a target. Whenever Pedro walked around Highland Park with Christopher or his other black friends, Avenue's members would go after him. They called him an N-word lover and warned that if he didn't stop hanging around with black people, they would kill him. Once, when Pedro and Christopher were driving through the neighborhood in Pedro's truck, a group of Avenue's members pulled up alongside them, punched Christopher in the face, and shouted racial slurs at Pedro. On October 26, 2000, Christopher himself was attacked by Porfirio and Alejandro while waiting at a bus stop on Figueroa Street. He reported the assault to LAPD, but initially refused to press charges, scared that Avenue's members would retaliate. That changed when Alejandro later pulled out a gun and pointed it at him. Christopher then decided to cooperate. On November 30th, he identified Alejandro in a photo lineup. On December 3rd, Alejandro was arrested for the assault. Not long after, Christopher called Angela Cortez, the mother of his daughter. Angela recalled that he sounded anxious and uneasy. The call came about a week after their daughter's birthday, and Christopher told her he wanted to see his child because the Avenues were after him. Only 8 days after Alejandro's arrest, Christopher was waiting at the same bus stop he was attacked at weeks earlier. This time, Porfirio walked up and shot him several times in the head, killing him instantly. Just 5 days later, on December 16th, investigators recorded a prison call between incarcerated Avenues member Dusty Chavez and Porfirio. In that conversation, Porfirio called Christopher a racial slur in Spanish and admitted that he and Alejandro assaulted him in October. Porfirio acknowledged that Christopher reported the assault and identified Alejandro and that police raided Alejandro's home. He then told Dusty that fool's gone. On November 3rd, about a month before Christopher's death, Anthony Prudhomme, another black man living in Highland Park, was shot in the head while sleeping in his own bed. An LAPD officer investigating the scene suspected that Christopher and Anthony's murders were connected and requested ballistics testing. Firearms
I mean, you can say they won't try this in the South, man, but there's a lot of black people do you know there's a lot of black people who still get unalived in the South? There was some twins who got unalived by a white man in Georgia. I did a story about a black man in Mississippi and his son downtown trying to find his way to work. He got dragged by a rope by a group of white people. Do you guys know in Mississippi there was a black man who got hung with a rope out there, with a rope around his neck? So racism is happening all across the South.
Diana Paul later confirmed that both Christopher and Anthony were killed with the same .25 caliber gun. David Elmer Cruz, a former Avenues gang member, told a state court that Porfirio admitted to killing Christopher and that the murder was a hit ordered by Alejandro because Christopher had reported the October assault and was expected to testify. Eventually, Porfirio was convicted in state court of murdering both Christopher Bowser and Anthony Prudhomme. Just weeks after Kenneth Wilson's murder, Jesse shot an off-duty police officer outside a Jack in the Box. He was convicted of that attempted murder in October 1999 and sentenced to 20 years in prison. While serving time, Jesse cut a deal with investigators. He provided information about the Kenneth shooting in exchange for immunity. On February 13, 2000, Jose was arrested for Kenneth's murder. During questioning, detectives played him a taped interview of Jesse, where Jesse implicated Gilbert Merced himself and Jose in the killing. At first, Jose denied any involvement, but when detectives told him that Gilbert had ratted him out, Jose broke and confessed. He was later convicted in state court for Kenneth's murder and sentenced to 45 years to life.
So all I'm saying is a lot of blacks listen. Charleston, South Carolina, a white man shot up a church and unalive 12 black people. Dylan Roof. In Jacksonville, Florida in 2023, a white man went in the Dollar General, laid down like 5 black people, unalive 3 black people. Right? So there's a lot of racially motivated attacks going on in the South. The thing is, black podcasters are not talking about it though. There's a lot of black people getting hung in the South. And these stories pop up all the time, but I don't see black content creators in the South talking about that. I just don't hear it. Make sure that you guys bless the like button. It ain't nothing.
In 2005, federal prosecutors indicted members of the Avenues 43 gang in Los Angeles. The 3-count indictment centered on civil rights violations, accusing the gang of waging the campaign of violence and terror against African Americans in Highland Park. Count 1 charged Fernando, Gilbert, Alejandro, Porfirio, and Merced with conspiring to interfere with the federally protected housing rights of African American residents in Highland Park. The killings of Kenneth Wilson and
A black man just got hung at a Mississippi University. A black man got hung at a Mississippi University. He got hung. They had a rope around his neck. You know what they said? Oh, there's no signs of foul play. That's what they said. They fixed him up and said there's no signs of foul play. So a black man gonna hang himself from a tree with a rope? I think's not. Happened in Mississippi like 5 months ago.
Christopher Bowser were highlighted as key overt acts in the conspiracy. Count 2 accused Gilbert, Merced, Alejandro, and Fernando of killing Kenneth because of his race and because he was exercising his right to use the public streets of Los Angeles. Count 3 charged those same 4 men with possessing and discharging 3 firearms during Kenneth's murder. Merced didn't go on trial with the rest of his co-defendants because he went on the run. Both Jose and Jesse became key government witnesses, testifying against their fellow Avenues 43 gang members in the federal trial. On August 1, 2006, the jury convicted Gilbert Saldana, Alejandro Martinez, and Fernando Cazares on all counts. Porfirio Avila was found guilty on count 1 only. On November 20, 2006, Gilbert, Alejandro, and Fernando were each given life sentences for every count. The life terms for counts 1 and 2 would run concurrently, but the life sentence on count 3 was to run consecutively. For Gilbert, the punishment was stacked on top of life terms he was already serving in state prison for 2 other unrelated charges, 1 murder charge and an attempted murder charge. Porfirio was sentenced on January 22, 2007 to life in prison on count 1. He was already serving life sentences in state court for the murders of Christopher Bowser and Anthony Prudhomme. In 2004, the FBI and the Los Angeles Police
You guys down south, blacks down south know where to find white supremacists. White supremacists are not hard to find. You know where you can go to certain bars, you can go to certain hangouts down south to find these racist rednecks. You know where to find the rednecks down south, just like we know where to find racist Mexican gang members if we're looking for them. Let's be real. The thing is, Highland Park is the equivalent of a sundown town in the deep south. Ku Klux Klan behavior. The only difference is the Ku Klux Klan behavior in California is coming from Mexicans. The Ku Klux Klan behavior down south is coming from redneck white folks. Yeah.
Police Department put out a reward of up to $70,000 for any information that could lead to the capture of Merced Cambero Jr. For years, Merced managed to stay one step ahead of authorities. He fled across the border and hid out in Baja, Mexico, living under a false identity. His run came to an end on February 3, 2017, when Mexican authorities finally tracked him down, arrested him, and turned him over to U.S. law enforcement. Merced eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. When explaining the sentence, Judge Anderson noted two key factors: Merced's acceptance of responsibility and the wishes of victims and witnesses who wanted to avoid the trauma of going through another trial. Thank you for watching.
Listen, we know it's not every Mexican, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of racist Mexican gangs all over Southern Cali. We know this to be a fact, but I'm not saying every Mexican is racist, but we would be crazy to deny the fact that there are a lot of racist Mexican gangs. And listen, these Mexicans don't even live around black gangs. There's barely any black people in these communities. So it shows you the blatant racism. Hit the like button, y'all. Make sure that the likes add up to the viewers. He said Culver City is a sundown town to me. Yeah, Culver City is over there. You know where Culver City is, man. Culver City is in West LA.
In this county in Southern California from these two different cultures. Actually, it's more than two, because we're not just dealing with Mexicans and blacks, but we got blacks that are immigrating from different countries. We got Latinos that are immigrating from different countries, and it just seems like it's getting worse.
Right. And let me tell you this. Okay, I'm Mexican, indigenous, Indian. There is no other race or any other person that's going to make me feel inferior because of the color of my skin. And nobody else, a black man, an Oriental, Asian, should be the same way. Okay? But I understand the politics. Things happen in prison and they trickle down into the schools, into the high schools. I don't know if you remember, but back there was a lot of racial riots in the 90s that trickled all the way down.
We said it's not racism, it's called sticking together. You can never expect for a Mexican to call out racism in his own community. They're not going to do it. Sonny made a million excuses for it. American Cholo made a million excuses for it. You got Mexicans in my comment section trying to make it seem like it's not racism. So they'll never be honest about what's really going on. They're going to gaslight you, or either they're going to gaslight you or just deflect from the whole conversation. Hit the like button. No, it's not true. You damn right it is true.
The high schools, and they were having racial riots there. Okay. So first of all, let's be honest. California is a gang-based vicinity. This whole area is gang-based, and it's not about color. It's about gang politics. This gang don't get along with that gang, and it's going to happen. Okay, because if you look at it, you got all these youngsters running around saying the N-word, dressing like they're black, talking like they're black. So obviously it isn't a color thing. It's a gang politics thing. That's why there's never going to be.
Just because Mexicans say the N-word and act black don't mean that they all like black people. They just want to benefit from the culture. This is what I mean when I say they're not honest. Just because Mexicans call themselves the N-word and they make rap like black people and imitate black culture, that doesn't mean that they like black people, because at the end of the day, they want to profit from our culture. They want to make money off of our culture. So they try their best to imitate our culture for financial gain. Let's not get it twisted. Right? A lot of Mexicans will say, "What up, my N? What up, whoopty whoop?" But at the end of the day, they still don't like you. They just want to profit from our culture. Just because you see other races of people calling themselves the N-word and they're talking in a black slang or speaking in a black vernacular doesn't mean that they like black people. Come on, black people, we are smarter than that.
Any kind of correlation that all these people are talking about it's non-existent. It's not gonna happen because one man can't. Not one man can change it. It has to be a group effort for everybody to change it, and that's never gonna happen. There's too many people on the black side that talking negative about Mexicans, and a lot of it is not even having anything to do with the Mexicans. A lot of it is different different nationalities, they just assume we're Mexican. And the Mexican ain't going to do it because, the same reasons. They're just not going to get along. They're just not going to see eye to eye because we're always pointing fingers at each other, and that shouldn't be like that. We should be able to coexist with each other. Walk down the street, hey, what's up, man? Good morning. There was not too long ago, we went to Burger King, and it was raining. I see this black guy, youngster, sitting there all wet, trying to warm up. I was like, you all right? He goes, yeah, I'm just a little hungry. He didn't look like a bum or nothing. He just looked like, I go, what happened? He goes, oh, my car broke down. Nobody could kill me. I've been here for a while. I went and bought him some food. I didn't do that because of the color of his skin or anything. I did it because the man was hungry. So I'm not going to eat with them, but at the same time, hey, my hand's there for you. You know what I mean? I will help a black man just as quick as I will anybody else.
Now, you said that it's too difficult to happen because one person can't do it. It's going to take a collective. It's going to take a whole thing. But also, I think it has to come from the prisons on the brown side, because the politics on the brown side in prison is far more influential on the streets. And we saw a good example of how black and brown can get along when the East Coast Crips and the Florencia Treses got along in 2019 after a 20-year, and I will say a 20-year bloody war. That wasn't just like a casual conflict. That was a conflict that lots of people perished, and because one carnal inside prison decided this is not good. This is not good for me. This is not good for my barrio. This is not good for a whole bunch of reasons. He made it happen. So if that one carnal can make that happen on the streets of LA, imagine if all the carnals agreed with right. that.
But him, that person you're speaking of, that was his barrio.
Yes, it was.
And how big is Florence?
Very big.
Okay. That's a collective. That's a collective. That's somebody, he had the power to say, hey, do this. They're going to do it.
But there were some Florences that didn't want to do it. There were some youngsters that were trying to go against the grain, and they got handled. They got handled. And I can tell, I was privy to attend some of these meetings, and you can see the faces on a bunch of these guys from Florence. They were just mad and, unhappy. And then they called in, they had a phone with, on FaceTime, and, and I've said his name before, and he said it was okay. He's resting now. But Babo from F-13, who just died in June after getting a compassionate release, he's on FaceTime, and he's really running the show. And I was thinking to myself, man, if there were more carnals from their sections, from their area, to say, hey, this black-brown thing got to cease. Like Long Beach right now is bad. The Longos and all the black gangs right down there, it's going bad. And I spoke to Bobo. I ended up getting his cell phone, talking to him to say, hey, can we do what we did in East Coast Crip, Florence area? Can we expand this to other sections? And he said it's possible, but we have to make sure that the guys from that section agree with it. And that's the hard part, to get everybody to agree with it. And I don't understand, why is it so difficult to agree? I don't know who runs Long Beach. I don't know who's in charge of Long Beach, but why is it so difficult for that guy now to say, hey, no more conflict?
I don't know. Because they all have different opinions about things, I guess. You know what I mean? Just like anybody else. But like I said, it's going to take a collective. That guy you speak of had that collective. He had the power to say, all of you do it. And if you don't, there's other guys that are going to make you do it.
I wish there was a guy that had the power that extended through the whole city. Yeah. But everyone only has the power in their section.
And look at, let's be honest. When there is, say if I'm at a baseball game or a football game or, whatever, and I have a conflict and there's 3 or 4 brothers they're gonna rush me, all of them. You know what I mean?
Wait,
and it goes both ways.
at a baseball game?
Yeah, or anywhere. I've seen it. I've seen guys get boo bob when there's three. But see, like just recently, there was a lady, two Mexican ladies got attacked by multiple black girls, and they load that truck. You know about that, right?
Which
So
one?
the little Loto
Yeah, this was what, in like 2020, 2021?
a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And they're laughing about it and think it's funny. And you know, these poor old ladies are getting beat up. It's like, what are you doing? You know, like you gotta have compassion. People gotta start learning. You treat people the way you want to be treated. You treat people's elders the way you would want them to treat your elders. And I think a lot of people forget that. But I can say
Like that, Sonny. We've never burned down Mexican houses for living in black communities. You guys have burned black people's houses just for living in your communities.
for Raza, we're more based on treating our elders with respect.
Now, there was a black guy that attacked a lady at a vending of cart a couple years. This was like 2020, 2021. And he got DP'd by his brothers from his neighborhood because they said that wasn't cool what you did. You know, that was completely out of line. And I thought that was a great effort for his homeboys to DP him. And then they made him get on camera and apologize for what he did to I think it was the Alota lady.
All respect for that.
You know, that
I've
was,
seen it. I know what you're talking about, and it was all respect for that. For those guys that do that, DP their people, that meant a lot. At least in my opinion. But then, who am I? I don't have that collective.
yeah.
I'm Sonny Boy from Elmwood Street. We're in the corner.
So there you go.
Corner of Lake Street and Elmwood in Burbank. When we first rolled up around here, it was there was actually a lot of gangs around here. There used to be like 18, Frogtown, Avenue, Diamond Street, all in this little cul-de-sac. Be partying, whatever. I lived a few blocks down. Started hanging out here and we started clearing people out. All the youngsters started having little problems with little different neighborhoods and getting into it. Started kicking it right here.
Coexisting with very little conflict. But if they're from, let's say, Long Beach, if you ask a brother from a black dude from Long Beach, he'll probably say absolutely yes. So I think it depends on what region of LA we're talking about.
Well. How about when the region of LA turns to the region of the correctional facility?
I think a lot of black dudes that go to prison come out and say that, yeah, man, the message is racist.
And I think the same amount of blacks are racist against the message, believe it or not.
In prison or just in general?
I think both parties that go to jail, okay, whether you're black, whether you're brown, when you go to prison, you will become racist against the other party. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I think blacks are the least racist of any single group that exists.
No, Lonzo, no way. No way.
They're the most, generally speaking, historically, they're the most embracing, the most open, and the most integrated group of people in the history of America.
Then you
Said, no, that's not true. That's his way. He said, I think blacks are the most accepting. Listen, Mexicans was able to start barrios in black communities. You can't go to East LA and start a Blood or Crip gang. You can't go to El Monte and start a Blood and Crip gang. The Mexicans gonna be on your neck. He gonna say, Alonzo said blacks are some of the most welcoming and accepting. No, that's not true.
when you go to prison, you will become racist against the other party. That's what I'm saying.
We don't have anti-Mexican politics. Mexicans have anti-black politics. What did I tell you? They come with these false equivalences, or they're just going to flat out lie and say it's not true when in reality it is true. Black people don't have racist politics towards anyone. Mexicans are the ones with anti-black politics. Let's be real about that.
Okay, but I think blacks are the least racist of any single group that exists.
No, Lonzo, no way. No way.
They're the most, generally speaking.
A lot of blacks are racist against the Mexicans, believe it or not.
In prison or just in general?
That's it. I think both parties that go to jail, okay, whether you're black, whether you're brown, when you go to prison, you will become racist against the other party. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I think blacks are the least racist of any single group that exists.
No, Lonzo, no way. No way.
They're the most, generally speaking, historically, they're the most embracing, the most open, and the most integrated group of people in the history of America.
Then you may have never ran into a Crip in the 80s or the 90s, brother. Because they got that vicious fucking, that vicious title for a reason. It didn't come just because they were nice guys. It became because it came to a point where I'm pushing up on you. I'm more gangster than you. I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. I'm going to get you. That's just my personal opinion.
You'd have to
what do I know?
You'd have to give me a specific.
Yes, blacks are, you have gangbangers who are bullies, but they're not racist. Some, gangbangers can be bullies, but blacks were not taught to be racist towards another group. We don't have anti-Latino politics, right? Blacks wouldn't care about sharing items with people. We really don't care about that. The Mexicans were the main ones tripping off of their people sharing items with us. So the anti-black politics comes from the Mexicans and the white boys. That is a fact. Especially if you're talking about California prisons or,
Example, because I can give you example after example of barrio and neighborhoods and Crips and Bloods and Mexican gangs getting along. For example, the Harpies. The Harpies live in a black area. And what did that black gang say to the Harpies?
No. Before we go back to the Harpies, let's talk about the firebombing. We're talking about Boyle Heights. Okay. What year was that? 2012?
I don't know the exact year, but it was a while ago.
Do you believe that
the firebombing took place in 2014? And that's not the only area that black people got firebombed by Mexicans. It took place in Hawaiian Gardens and Azusa 13 in the Valley. Come on, man. Let's be real. When you firebomb somebody's house just for being black, that is Ku Klux Klan behavior. That ain't got nothing to do with gang politics.
And that year, whatever year that was, you think we as brown people killed more black people on a gang basis, or we killed more of ourselves on a gang basis?
Definitely brown on brown is.
See, here he goes deflecting. Now he said, well, do you think we unalive more black people than Mexicans? Every race unalives their people more. But you're not going to use that to deflect from the racism that comes from your community. We're not going to let you do it. What did I tell you? They're going to gaslight you or flat out deny it, or they'll come with a false equivalence. And I think I proved my point all throughout this live stream.
Hey, you know better than anybody else, there's certain things to the game, and it's not fucking a racial thing, because we kill ourselves much easier in our own fucking hoods for some stupid shit than killing a black person. They're us. They're, like I say, they're Cali Mac.
People keep saying the CJ Mac, I believe his name is.
Okay.
And I saw him give an interview, and it doesn't match my style of interview. It just doesn't. He can go on those. I think it was No Jumper. I saw the guy on. It's nothing against him personally, but it's just not what I'm looking for in terms of telling someone's story. At least articulate something that somebody could learn from. Someone that has an experience that might be impactful to someone. And just what I saw from the brother, it seems like he's somewhere else in his life. Not to put him down, not to criticize him. This is not an attack towards anyone. Of course,
I get it.
It doesn't vibe with what I'm trying to do on my platform.
Yeah. No, I saw it. It popped on my feed. I was like, the fuck? I was like, I ran into guys like that straight up. Like, dude, what the fuck? But the crazy thing that trips me on that guy is you see his earlier stuff, because once it started popping my feed, I saw his earlier. I'm like, this guy wasn't the same guy, dude. He fell into the persona. He jumped into it. He threw more into it. And one day that guy's gonna wake up and be like, what the fuck have I been doing, dude? Straight up, he's gonna.
A few people that were, you know, a little bit more rambunctious and a little bit more aggressive on the camera.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example. Successful as a rapper. Maybe this is what he thinks he needs to do to be popping, as everyone says on social media.
Right.
But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that hopefully he'll evolve and that this is just a stage. I'm interviewing the guy right now.
Yeah.
Do that. This is the guy that has all the facial tattoos, right? He's in his late 20s.
28, 30 years old now. They 20, 30 years old, Playboy.
Yeah, well,
good luck.
You know, I wish him all the success. I wish him well. And I bet you 5 years from now, he'll be another person.
Hey, Alec.
I grew up with harpies, so I know a lot of them cats personally, man. You know what I'm saying? Like going to school with them, so I know a lot of them personally. So, you know, drifters too. I mean, they're not around like that no more, because the drifters used to be over there on 23rd Street, right there, like kind of by Normandy. But yeah, I know some drifters. Of course, harpies. You had another Mexican gang called Barrio St. Andrews on Washington and St. Andrews. You had the Clantone 14s that was over there. The Vato Locos is over there, but the Clantone 14s wiped out the Vato Locos. You know, the Vato Locos was already a smaller gang anyway, and when the Clantone 14s came over there, they kind of pushed the Vato Locos up out of there. But yeah, man, true story.
Hey, what are we gonna do with the homeless, dude? I told you. I'm telling you, they're taking over, fool. It's tweaker heaven. They're gonna come. It's gonna be. It's gonna be the Matrix, dude. What are we gonna do with homeless? We gonna hug them?
A lot of these homeless people in LA are not from here because they're coming here because of the weather. So we're inheriting America's homeless problem as well as having our own homeless problem.
Okay, no. What are we going with the homeless? That's the question. What are we going to? I don't want to hear the whole thing about we're inheriting. What are we going to do with the homeless?
I don't think there's anything we can do.
The tents, dude. The tents.
Well, we used to have a dome city along the 110 freeway like 20 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but there were these white domes, looked like igloos. And they
I went to Mount Vernon myself. I went to Mount Vernon and Pio Pico for sure.
The homeless people there, but you know, our homeless population was like.
But listen, man, we're gonna get up out of here, man. We've been here for 2 hours. I went to 24th Street School. I went to 24th Street School. I graduated 24th Street School. Then I went to Mount Vernon.
Of what it was what it is today.
Yes.
So I really got to think hard about what do we do with the homeless. One of my
what do you mean you got to think hard? Okay, are they homeless or are they drug addicts?
They're both.
Majority.
Not all homeless people are drug addicts. Some of them are.
Majority. So we're gonna get up out of here, you guys. I appreciate you guys for pulling up, showing love. Make sure that you guys bless the like button. It ain't nothing. King Supreme, you know, you had no summer vacation. That's crazy. You must have went to, I went to Mount Vernon in the 90s, the late 90s. I was at Mount Vernon in the late 90s, man. But yeah, you probably went there maybe like in the 80s or the early 90s. But I'm gonna get up out of here, man. I appreciate everybody blessing the like button. You know, shout out to my dog Scoop in the building. You know what I'm saying? Propaganda of the oppressor. But man, make sure that you bless the like button, man. We had a dope show today. I appreciate you guys pulling up for the knowledge, wisdom, and information. Listen, you can fact check everything that I said. Seriously. You know, now in my part of town, wasn't no Mexicans firebombing no black people houses. And on my side of town, there's too many black people. There's a lot of black gangs over there. So, of course, that's not going to happen in a community where you have black gangs. Now, in East LA, where there's no black people, you can get away with firebombing a black person house in East LA because you don't have black gangs over there. You don't even have a sizable black population in those areas. So they get away with stuff like that in East LA. There's no black gangs and no black people. So they can target innocent civilians over there, and there's no repercussions for that because those people are not gang related. They have no ties to any gangs, period. So that's the situation in East LA, La Puente, El Monte. He doesn't care about race issue. Well, the thing about it is you got a lot of guys in LA who put gang stuff ahead of their race. But I'm going to get up out of here. I appreciate you guys. Peace, love, and blessings. Make sure that you bless the like button on your way out. Peace to everybody. I'm gone.